I would like to talk about a teaching method that is not very constructive, creative, or corrective. So I have spent time teaching pre-kindergarten students at an academy, and I would observe the different classrooms, and there's a main teacher, there's an assistant teacher, and I noticed a method that I see going on in a lot of teaching, okay? And I feel it is going on everywhere, okay? You are bad, you are good. The punish and the reward. If you're good, you'll get a cookie. Your mom, your dad will take you to McDonald's and you'll get a nice hot fudge sundae, okay? Or you'll get a nice pizza with all the toppings. That's your reward if you're good. But what is it to be good? To be good is to be quiet, to not speak up, to take a nap when you're told, to play the way the teacher wants you to play, to not talk back, to not ask questions. Definitely don't ask a lot of questions. That's good. Basically, unexpressed. Emotion unexpressed. Thoughts unexpressed. Adventure and exploration is a good child. To be unexpressed is to be good. That gets you the cookie from your mom, okay, or your hot fudge sundae at McDonald's from your grandparents. And when you're bad, you're told, and this is what I've heard, you're ugly. There is a teacher I know. I observed her method, and I just found this quite astounding in a very negative manner. You're ugly. You're ugly. When you're bad, for example, you talk too loud, you're ugly. You don't sleep during nap time, you're ugly. You ask too many questions during reading time, you're ugly. Okay? You are wrestling, you're playing too obnoxiously, you're ugly. And there are many teachers that use different words than ugly. It could be, there's something wrong with you. What's wrong with you, kid? What's wrong with you? You know? Or, it's bad. It's a bad you. I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed in you. Shame on you. You're a disgrace. This is unacceptable. This is unacceptable. You are unacceptable. Go sit over there. Stare at the wall. And contemplate on how ugly you are and how unacceptable you are. So I see these kids, and I've observed the way they act around this sort of teaching method. They hold themselves back, which is not good, okay, for a child to hold himself back, or his or herself, meaning hold himself back from speaking up, from asking a question, from speaking what they feel, because they are thinking, I'm going to be in the doghouse. I'm going to be in the doghouse. Whatever I do, whatever I say, I'm going to be in the doghouse. Okay, I'm going to be shamed. Whatever I do, whatever I say, if I just express some silly thing, some silly quirk, I'm going to be put in the doghouse. I'm in the doghouse. So I've seen kids that are in the doghouse like 3 or 4 times a day. They're in the doghouse. Oh, you ask too many questions, you're in the doghouse. And this is what I've observed directly, my own observation. You're in the doghouse for this, you're in the doghouse for that. Do you talk too much? You don't take a nap when you're told. You don't play the way the teacher tells you to play. You're not learning the way the teacher tells you to learn. You're not seated in the place the teacher tells you to sit. So understand that there needs to be structure. But when children are unexpressed, they tend to be more volatile. When we think of volatile, we think of like a boiling. You're boiling inside. And that's what happens for a lot of adults. To be unexpressed, it creates agitation. It's restlessness. So I see a lot of children that are very restless because they're so deeply unexpressed. They're restless because of that. And that creates seeming volatile, which could be passive aggressive, could be what we call the word quote unquote misbehaving. So all of this mischief, rambunctiousness, this high energy that just seems a little bit explosive, it seems like too much, is simply because the child has all of this stored, unexpressed thought, question, feeling that they didn't process or weren't allowed to express, and that just turns into restlessness, and that eventually turns into misbehaving and being a little bit rambunctious and being a little bit what we call the child that needs attention. Okay, they're extra loud, extra loud, because they simply want to be expressed and they want to express. And it's very uncomfortable and unnatural for a child to be unexpressed. It makes them feel edgy, jittery. It makes them feel unsafe. It makes them feel their energy is being blocked. And children, when their energy is blocked, that's when we call the misbehaving really happens. But we just slap on kind of a diagnosis of, my diagnosis is that you're bad today. We never really look at what is actually going on leading into that. And as adults treat ourselves, we are very restless because we're unexpressed as adults. And what we call our relationships is like we're putting each other in the doghouse. Okay, you're in the doghouse because of this and this and that and this and then, and it's never ending. And the way we treat our relationships, like our personal, like our marriages, like you're bad, you're good, it creates this for men and women. The man feels unexpressed. He can't say, do, or be a certain way because it will irritate the woman. And the woman is the same way. She can't be, do, or say something because it will agitate or irritate the man and then cause some sort of conflict where one is bad, one is good, and that leads into someone's going in the doghouse. And nobody wants to be in the doghouse. That's why kids just kind of shut up, They're told, okay, be quiet, or you're ugly because you didn't do this or do that. So they're like, okay, I'll just be unexpressed. But that's unnatural and it's very uncomfortable. And it really halts and stuns their learning process. Okay, children need to be expressed. They need to be explorers. They need to ask questions and they need to receive answers and then other answers and then more answers and then answers are improved from the previous answers the other day. That's what really energizes a child and brings a sense of balance. It helps a child to not what we call be the neurotic behavior of the parents. So when I see neurotic behavior of the kids, I always just look directly at the teacher and at as well as the parents. But it's so unexpressed. So children, I feel, are very much, as we know, the teacher sets the stage for the room. We know either it's a yoga teacher, either it's some mystic teacher, it's like a yogi, a guru, any sort of teacher that's teaching a class. They're setting the stage. They're setting how we are going to express ourselves, how we're going to express ourselves. So if a teacher walks in very much unavailable, no patience, no tolerance, no flexibility, no sense of exploration, no sense of wonder or willingness to answer questions. What happens? The stage is set for a child to only learn what is allowed to be learned. And that defeats the whole point of what we call going to a guru. We're not going to the yogi or the yoga teacher, the mystic teacher, any sort of we call teacher where we're sitting and we're listening to be preached. Okay? A preacher is not a teacher. A teacher is not a preacher. So when we're just like the preaching thing, we are very much putting restraints on what a child will learn. And a child is so open-minded, so expanded in their willingness to ask questions and their willingness to think about things and to contemplate and to introspect and to observe and to come to conclusions and to just soak up things that they need a stage that can meet them where they're at, which is a teacher who's open-minded. And that's a teacher. A preacher usually is not open-minded. It is, here is the facts, here you go, you have to recite that, and that's that. There is no other sort of path, there is no exploration around that, that's that. So basically that teaching method of being just preaching, there's no room for expression. And if you really look at that preaching method, really nobody's asking questions, nobody gets answers, there's no room for open-mindedness, for exploration, for looking at things differently. There's really no room for learning, or really no learning, because learning is hands-on experience. Learning is not just repeating the ABC and there you go. We know ABC leads to many, many things. It is just one thing that leads to another thing that leads to another thing, and then it's just never ending. And that's the mind of the child. So with this method of good and bad, I've had children come to me because they've been so conditioned in this method that they come to me and they're asking, am I good today? Am I bad today? And I tell them, yes, we had a learning lesson, a learning experience. So when children come to me and they say, I fell, or this person, we were running together, they kind of shoved me on the ground, I always say, this is a learning experience. Instead of, you are bad, go sit in the corner, you are good, let me get you a cookie because you fell and hurt your knee, or somebody pushed you while you're running. I always say this is a learning experience. Okay, so it's not so much punishment as I'm going to crucify you and put your name on the naughty list. It's more so showing you that there are other options. There are other options for the way that you can be with your friends, the way that you can be with yourself, and those other options might be better for you. If you show a child other options, that maybe not shoving when you're running with your friend will create more trust and respect in your friendship, okay? And that might create more joy. And kids, if you tell them options that will lead more joy and fun, they're definitely for it. But if you just scold them, put them in the doghouse and just say, you are really bad, you're ugly because you were running and you shoved this person. So what it does is it prevents them from maybe doing that again, meaning they don't want to run with their friend anymore because they associate running with their friend and accidentally falling over each other as I'm going in the doghouse. Or if I climb up the monkey bars and I fall and I hurt myself in some way, I'm going in the doghouse. Or I'm going in the doghouse. I'm going in the doghouse. I'm going in the doghouse. So what that does is it halts their growth in the way instead of looking at options for how they can, maybe climb the monkey bars better, instead of using one hand, you two hands, like look at what you're going instead of looking behind you, really put your feet on it, grab the thing. Looking at options, they're like, I'm not even just going to do it. I'm just, because I'm going to fall, I'm going to hurt myself, and then I'm going to be shamed and put in the doghouse. Okay? And that's what children don't need. They need options. They need to know that everything is a learning experience. They are a learning experience. Everything as a child is a learning experience. They need to scrape their knee. They need to run with their friends and get accidentally shoved or something like that. They need to know their options and the consequences of certain options and how they take away joy of oneself and others, and how other options bring more joy, bring more fun to their self and their friends. Because kids want to bring joy to themselves and to their friends. They want to have fun. That is the goal. And learning is fun for them because it gives them options, and they love options. Now, when kids get very unexpressed and get unexpressed for too long, that's when we get into children that are very boiling and volatile because of that, where they're acting out. We call it acting out, quote unquote, acting out, because they want attention. They're very angry inside because they feel that their whole childhood is about being in the doghouse. And once a child thinks my only option is to be in the doghouse, they're like, F it, I'm just going to just do that because evidently that's the only thing I'm good at. The only thing I'm good at is being bad. So I'm just gonna, if that's my only option, I'm just gonna do that. I'm gonna do that. So that's what kids are doing because they don't have any other options. They think there's no options because they've been conditioned to think doghouse, 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 no ice cream, no ice cream, no ice cream because of this, because of that, because of that, because of that. They're just like, F it, I'm so unexpressed, I'm so angry because of that, because I can't ask questions, I can't dance when I want, dance, I can't play the way I want to play, I can't learn the way I want to learn, that just volatile because of that. Okay, that restlessness turns into recklessness. Restlessness always turns into recklessness. Recklessness is a lot of our relationships. Restlessness becomes recklessness. And recklessness is a destroyer. Okay, it is taking away our options to be constructive, creative, and corrective, and leaves us to options of shame and judgment. And that is what we're dealing with. So I wanted to talk about this because this is something that I've observed. I've been observing, and I've contemplated about this for a while because I find myself very, very curious about the teaching methods, because I've seen many since I was a young person and learning early childhood education at a very young age and learning it even now. What is the method? So I'm finding for myself when I am teaching, the kids, the kids, they have this, they're very conditioned, they're very tight, they're very uptight when they're with a certain teacher that is very tight and uptight, very rigid, and in the way that's very closed-minded. You're going to be what I want to be, authoritative, very controlling, always wanting the upper hand, that kind of bad, good, reward, punishment. But when I come in, I'm very open-minded. I have high tolerance and I have high patience. And children, they can sense what we call true parasympathetic strength in a teacher. So true parasympathetic strength has to do with your ability to handle things with ease. So most adults, they may, be reading a book and you would think parasympathetic nerve, which is about restorative healing, relaxation, kind of like when you're doing yoga or you're meditating or before you sleep, you're kind of just dazing off and you're feeling like very calm, just natural calm. It's an aura, it's an ambience of calm, okay? And children can sense that, okay? And then you can't really fake it because it has to do with your nerves, and your nerves, connects also with your glandular system, and they secrete in a certain way that creates this ambience to a person. So that's why certain people, we talk to them, they just automatically calm us, because their glandular system is secreting in such a way that they're creating this ambience around them. Just like herbal tea, you walk into a herbal tea house and you immediately feel calm, because herbs is very much like the secretion of the glands and the parasympathetic nervous system. It's about calming yourself down, restorative, replenishing part of ourselves. So children can sense that ambience within a teacher, and if they have it or not, it really kind of determines the direction of the classroom. If it's really high on, you could say high on what we call calcification, okay, of, we could say that like pineal gland, and we could say the calcification of the back, which basically just represents stress. Okay, it is stress, an ambience of stress, and this is all like this is measurable. Okay, this is measurable. This isn't just you just guess. No, it's measurable. The calcification of the pineal gland, or the glands, or the back, these kinds of things. It goes into the sympathetic nerve, which is kind of your alert, your stress, basically, just stress. You don't know how to restore yourself. You don't know how to return back to calm. You're basically in that fight or flight where you're feeling very like you're like a lioness and you're charging for that meat, and you think that's the last buffalo that, or you could say zebra, that you'll find. But lionesses understand that you cannot be in that sympathetic or that charge of energy the whole day, or lioness knows she will die. But we humans, for some reason, we're like that lioness on attack of that zebra, and we're like that for the whole day. And even when we sleep, we've been like that for the whole day. When we sleep, we don't even get into the parasympathetic nervous system, because we don't know how to get from that high of that lioness charging from that zebra, using so much energy, to all of a sudden we're in meditation while we sleep. So that's why our sleeping is restless. We have what we call insomnia, because we just can't get down to the levels we need to be biologically in order to get that restorative healing. Okay, in order to replenish, like the lioness replenishing that charge that she just did to get that zebra. She has to replenish or she'll die. So that's kind of with that parasympathetic and that sympathetic nervous system that we all have, and children are very much, they can feel it. It's like they go into that classroom, it's either like you're going into, you're walking into the subway, or you're walking into a tea house, and it's a totally different ambience. Walking to Subway, we feel very much like on alert. We feel a little bit anxious. When we walk into tea house, everything's calm. Everything is restorative. So we kind of like my method, since I've done so much of like yoga and so much of like Kundalini yoga and meditation, and really going deep, a deep practice of sadhana, I have this natural ambience of just being calm. And it's also, I feel, something I have with my genetics as well, of just being very grounded, okay, being very, very grounded. So when children know, children basically become the extension of the teacher. We don't really think of that. They become, like we talk about a Kundalini yoga teacher. The students are an extension of the teacher. The teacher is the giver. The teacher's giving his or her heart, and the people or the students are the extension of the teacher. So kids are this very much, because they're also very sensitive to this. They're not resistant. They know that teacher's giver and student is taker. So they become the extension of the teacher. Now, if the teacher is very much able, having that ambience of very high tolerance, high patience, open-mindedness, can handle a lot of things, that knows how to bring things down, that's a gift, to know how to bring things down quickly. Okay, bring the volume down, and not in a way that creates agitation within people or students. In a very natural way, just like when you bring your heart rate down. It's natural. You're not forcing your heart rate to come down after running. It's a natural process. It can happen quickly the more you relaxed you become. So if you're running, you want your heart rate to come down because maybe it's in some sort of red zone you don't want. But if your anxiety, if you're trying to you're anxious, it will actually take longer for your heart rate to get down to a more calm heartbeat than if you just breathe, you just kind of allow it to happen. It will happen a lot quicker. And that's the thing with children. Children want to have a structured environment. Kids don't want chaos. It's really the adults that create this chaos. Kids love structure. They love discipline. They love the setting of teacher and student. They want to be disciplined because they want to learn about how they can better express themselves and options. They want to learn about their options in life. So in order to learn about options and how to better express themselves, they need discipline. They need to learn from the teacher, and the teacher needs to teach and not preach. So, and a part of the process for children and learning how to better express themselves and about also their options is creativity. Creativity is open-mindedness. Creativity is patience. Creativity is tolerance. Creativity is not the teacher that gives 30 seconds to a kid who's trying to spell a word cat and they're like, oh, you don't get it. Oh, well. Okay. Creativity is looking at that kid that's trying to spell cat and learning quickly. Okay, that's to say, it's also how quickly can you bring it down, or how quickly can you do something as well without losing its authenticity. Find options that can help that child learn, and options are so prolific. There's so many ways you can learn how to spell cat, and that's the creativity part, and that's the teacher part. Okay, the creativity is based on the teacher. The kid has it, but the teacher installs it. Meaning it's like an installation. It's like a computer download. And for it to be installed, it has to be structured, or does it make sense to the computer, and the computer can't calibrate it into its system. And that's the same thing with a child. A teacher needs to know, is installing creativity into them that they already have. Installing some sort of app into your phone on options for creativity, and here you go, option 1, 2, 3, I'm giving you at least 10 options. Maybe I'll give you more later on, kind of thing. But with the troubling thing is when you have a big group of kids, it's, as we know, there's not enough teachers in the world. Okay, there's really not. It's like we really are in high demand of teachers. We can't really give options on an individual level. It has to be a collective level. But still, that can work. But we just need to give a lot more options when we do a collective level, because 10 probably won't do it for 23 or 30 kids. Because out of all those 30 kids, all of them probably have some sort of different way of making the connections in their head about how to spell cat. Okay, because that's just kids, that's people. We have so many different connections, that ways we do things and how we learn things and how we process things and how we understand things. It's different for every person. That's why we need as much options as possible. And options is not preaching. Not at all. It's never been preaching. So, but that's also the teacher. It's the teacher's willingness, the tolerance, to understand that to be a teacher is, you have to handle, you got to handle it. And not just handle one thing, one kid. You have to handle many, many things. It's like we call the brain of you simultaneously tasking, solving problems, organizing, resolving. That's the brain of the teacher, especially of young children. That's what we're doing. And it's a mind very expanded. It's a mind very dynamic. It has to be. So if a teacher is someone who just very one thing at a time, things can't overlap. I can only handle like one thing, a task at a time. Then that is really not the teacher. The teacher, you have to resolve conflict that kids have. You have to answer questions. You have to provide assignments. You have to provide organization. You have to provide discipline. You have to provide options, creativity, all of this stuff. And it's like, whoa, It's like, whoa. And that's why teaching, it comes with teachers, we have a group, we have a collective of teachers. And that's what helps us to really manage all of this. So it's like we call wonderful managers.